Hey, I'm Pastor Clark with Coffee Creek Church, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We've got the second part of our Do Good campaign that I want to share with you, and I think there's some really interesting things you're going to learn about what it means to really experience joy. And that's something that we seem to be pursuing a lot with watching what people buy and the purchases they make, with seeing the Amazon boxes pile up. And I think there's this concept that we have that we can buy our way into happiness. I remember a comedian one time saying something about, don't tell me that money can't buy happiness. Have you ever seen anybody sad on a jet ski? And if you think about it, you're like, well, probably not. They're always laughing and seem to have fun until I guess you could point out the many accidents that happen with those things. But I digress. There's this idea that if we just get the next greatest thing, right? The next iPhone, the next computer, the next car, the next piece of clothing, or those special shoes, that's going to be what does it. And what we find is that's really just a lie. It's this mirage on the horizon that we keep almost getting to, and then it's just, no, just a little bit further. And we see this play out in our world. We see people who win the lottery and are bankrupt within 12 months and are divorced and are not speaking to their family or completely estranged from all their loved ones from just a few months ago because money doesn't buy happiness. And so today, what we're going to focus in on is, if you see there on your slide, the word give. And so that's what we're going to talk about most today. And I want to address a few myths first. The first myth is that Americans, and particularly American Christians in particular, are stingy, or they don't tend to give much. And the research shows that this is not true at all, actually. According to the Giving USA 2024 research report that was put together, Americans donated an estimated $557 billion with a B, right? That's huge. That's a lot of money. And then if you dig into it a little bit further, 75% of Americans give annually, and half of Americans volunteer their time. When you look at us compared to other countries, Americans give 3.5 times more than the average French citizen, 7 times more than the average German, and 14 times more than the average Italian. Even when you account for income variation differences and tax differences, this was all factored into their math. Now, math's not my strong point, and I'm not trying to say we're better than other countries by any means, but what I am saying is that it is very wrong to say that Americans, and specifically American Christians, are not generous, because the final part of that report that was really interesting said that the strongest predictor of giving was faith. Religious attendance and faith were one of the strongest predictors. An impressive 91% of people who attended weekly worship services contributed to charitable causes. The researchers said this shows a clear link between religious practice and generosity. Now, we have a whole class of people out there that say they're Christian, or put a flag up, or tell you about how they vote or what the issues they support, right? But this is not talking about those people. This research is particularly for people that attend religious practices. They're involved in that. So that blows that first myth out of the water. The second myth is that my small gifts can't make a big difference. And we see this when people say, well, I can't give as much as, Bill Gates or whatever, so I can't give $1 million. And so what will my $50 do? What will my $100 really change? And the reality is, I think that's fair. Probably not a lot. But then take into instance, your giving never stands alone. Like, your giving goes with other giving. And so 10 people who give $100 have now given $1,000. Now that's different. Now that's changing things, isn't it? And so your gift, when you give it, don't think about just what that gift could do, but think about what that gift multiplied with other gifts could accomplish. Salvation Army, they get this, right? I said last week that I had volunteered with them in New York City and was learning from them, and they took me to some of their work, and I spent some time in some of their churches in New York City. And one of the things that I learned is that small gifts make a huge difference. The Salvation Army, through that kettle project where you see the bell ringers, they raise $150 million through that. $0.25, $1 at a time. That's a huge amount of money. But any one of those gifts is very small, right? Any one of those kettles doesn't do that much. But that pocket change, that thing that shoppers, they're going to shop for Christmas and they just give a little bit, that ends up making a huge difference. And the funds through those campaigns help over 30 million Americans every single year. So your gift never stands alone. Small, big, they can make a huge difference. Myth number 3, only rich people can be generous. Now, I've known wealthy people. I've known people that have done well for themselves, and they are some of the most generous people that I have met in general. And it's probably just because I don't meet any of the people that are not wealthy and generous at the same time, right? Those people don't hang out with pastors. So, but rich people are not the only ones that can be generous. Like, they can be, but that doesn't mean that the rest of us don't need to worry about that. In fact, psychological research, the most latest research, shows that giving creates what's called a positive feedback loop. And that means that when you give, it gives you a little burst of happiness. And when you repeat that process, it enhances productivity and it leads to greater success in most people's lives. Givers experience this kind of, there's no really way, it's a mild euphoria, and they reduce their stress and they help others at the same time. Perhaps most surprising in the research is that when people witness others giving, like when you see someone give, you are naturally, if you are the giver, you're naturally perceived as a leader. You're naturally perceived as someone who has their life together. You're naturally perceived as a good, quote unquote, person. And that's interesting because these myths, unfortunately, if we buy into these myths, they will shrink our joy, right? Just like the Grinch, they shrink our heart. And the harder our heart becomes, the more difficult it is to experience that real joy that God has in mind for us. In fact, God is the author of joy, and God's greatest joy is in being generous to his creation. We want joy for you, and particularly I want joy for you to be something that's not just experienced once a year, right, on Christmas or something, or your birthday, but I want you to experience joy on a regular basis. And so I want to dive into this idea of what it means when we give and what we see in people when they give. So I'm going to talk to you about this story in Mark chapter 12 because I think it is crucial for what we're talking about today. So let me just read this real quick to you. This is a story that Jesus tells about in Mark about the widow. And so Jesus is sitting near a collection box. That would have been where they were giving their offerings for the temple. And it says he's sitting down near the collection box in the temple and watching as the crowds drop in their money. And so apparently there's like this procession of people coming by and each one's putting in their offering. And it says many rich people put in large amounts. And then a poor widow came and she dropped in 2 small coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, I tell you the truth, this poor widow has given more than all the others who are making contributions, for they gave a tiny part of their surplus, but she, poor as she is, has given everything she had to live on. It's interesting because Jesus sets up kind of a surprise ending, a twist, if you will, right? He's watching them give, and all those that are watching people give these large amounts of money assume that he would applaud them. But he knows that though they give a large amount of money, they have way more in reserve. Like it's not hurting their feelings, right? It would be like me, if I walk past a penny on the sidewalk and then someone who sees that penny says, oh, he's just flaunting his wealth. And so the penny doesn't mean much to me in that moment. But if I was hard up, a penny could mean a lot. And so these people are putting in amounts of money that would shame most people. And yet he's saying, that's not real generosity. They're just giving a tiny part of their surplus. This lady's given more than them. Even though the dollar amount is not more, she's giving more because of the sacrifice. And who better to teach us about sacrifice than Jesus, right? He is sacrificial, giving up even his own life for us. And it's amazing to contrast here. I was reading a scholar that was talking about this particular teaching. He said, these were rich teachers of the law. These were rich religious people, and they were wealthy. And that wealth largely came on the backs of the poor, like the poor widow. And the poor widow is sacrificially giving. And so we learned something here. We learned that generosity and generous giving can also benefit the giver. It grows us spiritually. It shows us what's most important. It reveals to others our heart, and it shifts our focus to gratitude. We think a little drop is just not going to do much at all. We think it's like the ocean. Like, what is my one little drop going to do in this ocean? But it is drops that add together to make a wave and to make real change. And so we don't want generosity from you. We want generosity for you. And we are willing to do that so much to prove that 100% of our offering over this Do Good campaign goes to our partner, our nonprofit partner, which this time is the SPERO Project. And I'll talk about them again at the end. But we don't want you to give out of guilt. We don't want you to give out of law or feeling that someone's twisting your arm. We want you to give in order to experience the joy that comes with giving. And it's super simple. Once you start to give, once you start to be generous, it catches on. And it's hard to stop at that point because it feels good to give, to help others. So we are going to ask 100% of our folks that are Creekers that identify with our church to give, no matter what amount that is. And 100% participation is our goal. And then we pledge to give 100% of that away to our nonprofit partner. Acts 20:35 says it like this. He says, "You should remember the words of the Lord Jesus. It is more blessed to give than to receive." And so last week we talked about this idea of having a simple process in mind for service, right? So serve was the focus last week. And we said start small and repeat that and just keep going over and over and over. And that becomes a pattern of practice in your life. It's the same way with giving. Start small, start something that you can handle, and gradually work your way up into sacrificial giving. And repeat. Don't just do, a once a year thing, but do it as a repetitive basis so that you will sustain that real joy, because you'll find out that giving blesses the giver. Lewis said it this way when trying to think about what do we give? He said, "I don't believe one can settle how much we ought to give. I'm afraid the only safe rule is to give more than we can spare." And so what would that look like for you to give more than you could spare? I like to keep up on science news, and I was reading about something this last week, and it just piqued my interest. The science story did, and the connection that I could draw to what we were going to talk about this Sunday. I don't know if you read this, but this just came out, I think maybe 2 weeks ago in the science journals, that there is a kind of quasi moon. They're calling it 2025 PN7, and it's this very small, but it is traveling kind of in the same orbit as the sun. And so it's been orbiting the Earth for decades now, we believe, and we just found out about it. And they're calling it a quasi moon because it's quite small. It's about the size of a house, but there it is behind the sun, just rotating around the Earth, just going constantly orbiting around us. And we just noticed it. And so for decades, it's been there. And that's so odd because we have spent so much on space technology and watching that. We want to know when the meteors are coming our way. And I think for many of us, this is very similar to our experience with generosity. We are chasing joy forever and ever, and we're chasing it. And the answer was right there, hidden maybe behind something that we were looking at, a shiny package, right? And it was there for years and years. If we would have just walked through the door of generosity, we would have experienced the joy we'd been chasing that we never got to. It just kept running away from us. And so all along, joy has been right there in the giving. And the truth, when you give, you get to experience true joy. So 1 Timothy tells me what to do. Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. So that's my simple challenge to you today: start small, repeat. And if you only wait for the big things, you'll miss out on doing anything. And that'll be such a waste. So here's the idea for you: give generously. This is the practice. Give generously. And let's do this together. Ephesians 2:10, to sum up from last week, God made us to do good. He planned in advance for us to live our lives doing this. Look, when you give, you experience true joy. I want that for everyone. When I give, I feel that. Does it sometimes concern me because I'm giving something away that I could have held on to? Absolutely. I'm human, just like everyone, right? Everyone that's a giver feels that. But at the end of the day, when you see the difference you're getting to make right in your own community, whether it's feeding the homeless or it's welcoming folks in like we're talking about here with the SPERO Project, being hospitable to people, when you get to see that and you know that your little drop in the bucket has gone in with a bunch of other drops and it's made an ocean of change, that's huge. So I want you to imagine what it would be like if every person that hears my voice experienced the joy of generosity, from a kid, dropping their dollar in to a family stretching their faith and digging deep. What would it look like for you to say yes? And maybe there's a couple of things you need to say. Maybe this is the first time you're experiencing the generosity of God towards you and understanding that Jesus gave his life for you. And so maybe you need to respond just saying, yeah, Jesus, I trust you. Thank you for that gift. Maybe you've already done that and you need to say, you know what? I've been receiving generosity for a long time, but I haven't turned around and reflected that generosity. And this is your chance to do that. We want to invite you to reflect generosity. Do Good is our annual campaign. This is our third year to do this. And every year we raise money and give it away 100%. That means credit card processing fees, bank fees, anything. We pay all of that. We don't care about that. We give the raw amount that comes in to one of our nonprofit partners. This year we're partnered with the SPERO Project, and they do great work right here in Oklahoma City to welcome refugees, to find ways for asylum seekers to get connected and to feel at home. And that can be very difficult. You can imagine what it would be like you going to a foreign country if you had to flee your home. And so they help provide education and job training. They help encourage these folks and help them find resources in our community to get started. And some of that has to do with their language may not be English, and so they may be learning English for the first time. They may just need to navigate how our country works, how our city works, how the services work. And so picture for a moment the joy that you could spread around way far beyond us. And that is blessing these families, impacting our neighborhoods, helping out the skeptics and surprising people with real radical generosity. This is the opportunity for you. Next Sunday, we'll talk about what it means to love our neighbors in depth. But today, I just want to reiterate the idea that 100% of us give. Doesn't matter the amount. A dollar amount's not important. 100% participation is what we ask in this. So would you go to coffeecreek.app right now, click the give button, and give a gift. Make sure you select the drop down, Do Good. That will go. 100% of the Do Good offering will go right to our friends. We are going to give away 100% of this. And so that means no shipping and handling fees, no processing fees. 100% goes to our friends. And we think we can make a big difference in our community through the combined generosity of our church. And even if you're not in our church, but you consider us your family because you connect with us on our podcast or right here on YouTube or through our website or through our app, we want you to know that we want you to be involved in this too. And we can do this together and we can make a big difference for people right here in our backyard. So thanks so much. I hope that you'll pray about your generosity and giving towards this special, unique offering in the Do Good campaign. I'll see you next Sunday for our final teaching.